to the second part of the talk series on why, how, and where to publish. Uh, I'm so glad that so many of you could join us. If you're comfortable, you can go ahead and switch on your cameras. But please keep yourselves on mute. And if you have any questions, you can put them on the chat during the talk itself. And we will try to weave those questions into the conversations then. Or if that's not possible, then we'll answer them in the end. But feel free to, throughout the session, use the chat box to talk, share your experiences, ask any questions that you may have. Um, um, and one more thing, just in the beginning, so we can get to know each other a little bit better, see who all are attending this session. Can you all put a small introduction of yourselves in the chat, including the organizers of this session? Feel free to keep putting your introductions in the chat. Um, so I will continue, and I'll give a brief recap of what happened in the previous session before we move on. So in the last session, we talked about the reasons behind our decisions to pursue research and publishing. And Diksha gave us a three-part framework, which was very helpful in showing us how the reasons to do research can range from requirements to an almost existential need. And then Faizan spoke to us and gave us an overview of publishing that went back centuries to show us the integral role that journal publications have been playing within academia. And in this session, we will continue those conversations, and we'll try to get into more of the nitty gritties of writing, research, and publication, with the aim of making these processes a little more transparent and a little less daunting. Um, and so before we begin, I also wanted to give a brief introduction of the team and the organization. So E.L.A project, or Education and Liberal Arts, is an organization that works in the field of education and research. This organization is the publisher of E.L.A.'s journal. It also has a repository of open access resources that are worth exploring. I think we can put the links for both of this in the chat. Um, So, in today's session, Nikita, who is one of the editors of the E.L.A.'s journal, will be talking about how to publish. She's done research in the field of publishing and specifically open access. And after that, Sharanya will speak about where to publish. She's currently teaching an academic writing course at National Law School of India University in Bangalore, and she's done insightful research about literature and how it shapes and is shaped by culture. She's also an assistant editor at Elids. So now, without further ado, I will hand over this session to Nikita.
Uh, Thank you so much, Shreya, for the introduction. Reciprocally, let me introduce Shreya to you. She is a research associate at Mika University in Gujarat, and she'll be the moderator for this session. So yeah, I'll give me a moment. I'll share my slides with you. Okay. Um, can you guys see my screen? Perfect. So, in the previous session, Diksha and Fazan already gave us a rather overarching and nuanced view on why to research and why to publish. Let's assume that now you have a paper that you want to publish, you have your research done. The next question that arises is how to publish, and that's what I would be speaking about today. Now, within this section, I would be talking about how do you submit to a journal and then engage with its team. Uh, what not to do while submitting to a journal, how to avoid test rejections, and then how to proceed after that. Uh, in order to understand this process of publication, you need to know a bit about the publishing process itself, how it works out. So we'll have an inside view of how journal publishing works because for the purposes of this uh, talk series, we have focused upon journal publications, academic research publications. And finally, uh, the most integral part of this process is how to handle rejections and how to keep being a part of this process, how to navigate it over the years. Before I start my discussion, I would like to briefly know your answers to these questions on Menti. Shreya, can you help us with Menti? So I would simply like to know how many of you have already tried to submit your research to a journal and what kind of challenges and problems you have had. So we'll start with the first question. Uh, shared Mentimeter with you.
Um, you can go on menti.com and put in the code that you can see or scan the QR code to answer this question.
Okay, so we have already got two yeses and two nos. Let's wait a bit more. You can scan the code via your phone or the link has been put in the chat. I don't think the link's actually hyperlinked. Let me give it to you. So you guys can just open this link and use the code we have displayed on the screen and add that for you as well. So use this code and then answer this question, or you can have the QR code. Okay. Perfect. So we have more people who are looking forward to submit rather than who have already submitted. Great. We can go forward to the next question, I think. Ah, we have another vote.
Here's a follow up to that question of what kind of challenges or problems have you faced in submitting or publishing your work? Um, Not just after submitting your work, but what kind of challenges have you faced in submitting itself? in the first step itself.
You can also write about your publishing experiences in general. What did you like or dislike about them?
Okay, we have a few responses. Finding the right journal, maneuvering the process, and preparing my manuscript. Yes. Not sure where to publish the work. Yes. I think, as Faizan also had mentioned in his in the previous session, there is a proliferation of journals, and it becomes difficult. Um, Let me hide the QR code so we can read all the responses. Hard to decide which journal to submit to, how to ensure that it's not a predatory one. Ones that are popular charge really high APCs. Yes. Long and daunting process. Difficulty in choosing the appropriate journal, delayed responses. Every journal has different submission guidelines. So when I submit to one journal and it rejects my paper, and I have to submit my paper somewhere else, I need to revise my paper completely. Yes, I think these are all concerns that we've all faced at some point or the other, and try to address all of them. Nikita?
Oh, excellent. Oh, missing CFP deadlines. Yes. Excellent questions. I'll be trying to answer all of them during my presentation, and some of them would be taken up by Sharanya in the next part of this session, like things like missing on CFP deadlines, or we'll talk about how long and daunting a process it is on both ends for the researchers as well as for the journals. Uh, Choosing uh, in the difficulty in choosing an appropriate journal is something Sharanya will be taking care of. Not sure where to publish. Again, the next part of this presentation is where to publish. So I hope that would put more insight into it. I find it really hard to decide that the journal to submit to again, same, and how to ensure that it's not a predatory one. Yes, we'll be talking about this. The ones that are popular charge area APCs, yes, that's a publishing conundrum that we are all facing, how to figure out good journals and then how to ensure that it's something that's affordable to us. So yeah, finding the right journal, maneuvering the process, and yes, same. Every journal has a different submission guideline, so I can submit to one journal and it rejects my paper, and I have to submit my paper somewhere else, and I need to revise my paper completely. True, and it's a lot of work, but that this is work that needs to be done in order to get published. So I don't know any way around it. This is something you have to accept as part of the process. Yeah, okay. I guess let's like dive into it. Can we reshare the slide share? And you guys can keep answering. And we'll at the end, if there are any questions left, we'll go through the Menti again and we can answer the questions that are left. So yeah. Uh, great. Okay. When you're submitting to journals, the first thing that you need to know is what not to do while submitting to a journal. And it's actually the exact thing that the person who wrote the question was talking about. Do not submit, do not submit a previously written unpublished work as is to a journal. It will, and it most probably ensures a desk rejection. What's a desk rejection? A desk rejection is simply uh, the first round of evaluation by a journal, wherein they see whether the paper or the submission received is actually something they should even read or not. So if you receive a desk rejection, that means that the journal did not read your paper. It was not found suitable for reading. Okay. How then to avoid a desk rejection? How to ensure that your paper actually reaches editorial, the actual editorial process and gets evaluated based on the research that you have done? Firstly, ensure that that your paper comes within the scope of the journal. So there are times when people end up submitting to journals that may not be actually working in their uh, field of interest. They can be very niche journals also. For example, let's say there's a journal on Shakespearean studies, and you are writing on Brecht, and you end up giving that paper to the journal in Shakespearean studies, even though they both are, theater writers, your paper would most probably receive a test rejection in itself. Secondly, even if your research work comes within the scope of the journal, you also need to ensure that the present open CFPs are also aligning with your research. So let's say you have a broader journal within the liberal arts, and you have written a paper on translation studies, but the journal at present is working with the topic of disability studies. You submit to them, you'll most probably receive a less rejection. Until unless they also have a general section where they allow you for all sorts of submissions. So that's something you really do need to check. Again, one thing that I would like to clarify is this does not mean that you have to that your research necessarily has to contain the same keywords as the CFPs or exactly answer the CFP. Most journals appreciate more diverse and eclectic sense of perspectives. I can give you an example here. We, in our own journal, we once had issue of post humanism going on, and we received a paper on uh, the ethics of using data collected at the back end of websites to influence the choices of the users. This is way before AI became popular, but the paper, even though it was very eclectic in nature and was actually talking on big data and how AI does it, uh, collects it and uses it to show ads on different websites. We found it very pertinent to the topic of posthumanism and we ended up publishing it. So, yes, diverse, eclectic perspectives, but within the ambit of that CFP to some extent. Um, the third point is what we already discussed about. Go through the submission guidelines, abide by them. This is the most common reason for desk rejections. If you are by any chance not able to abide to certain submission guidelines, it's a good idea to write to the journal and figure out if they will be okay with it. This also ensures that you know that the journal has an active response time. They actually answer to your queries. It helps in the long run to have that conversation with the team. Uh, More examples of submission guidelines: word limit. If they're asking for 5,000 word papers, you end up sending a 2,000 word paper. It's not gonna cut it. If they're asking for a maximum limit of 5,000 word paper, you end up sending a 10,000 word paper. Again, it might be rejected. Formatting style. If they are asking for a MLA, you send APA. That's a problem. You can ask a journal whether it's okay with them in a mail, but yes, you should be sure before sending. Plagiarism is a strict no. Obviously, most journals end up checking for this sort of thing. Self plagiarism is something that I've found scholars to be more confused about. So anything that if you are building upon a old research and you end up uh, using some excerpt from it, that old research has to be similarly quoted the way you would quote another author or theoretician in order to be used. Simply because it's your own research, you can't just put it in a new paper without actually quoting and citing it. So that amounts to self plagiarism and leads to less rejects. Uh, More obvious examples of self plagiarism are uh, multiple submissions, like to different journals, that is, the same submission in different journals. And if it gets published in a place, it becomes self plagiarism. Uh, AI has become something contentious these days. Most journals have a policy around it. Either they allow some level of use of AI with acknowledgement that you have used AI, or there are journals who actually have a strict policy of no AI usage. Yes, you should be careful of these metrics while researching anyway, but yes, they are equally important while submitting. So, yeah, now let's say you avoided test rejection, your paper has reached a reading stage. How do you proceed after that? What do you do in a reading stage? I have another mentee question here for you guys. Have you received from a response from a journal? If you don't haven't, simply write no. If you have received a response, I would love to know what sort of responses have you been getting from journals. Shreya, can you help me with the Menti? You can again use the same link, same code, and we'll have a QR code as well. Yes. Okay.
Mm, we have it's two no's and a yes. They had certain suggestions for improving my paper. Also, they gave me a deadline. Yes. Okay. Some people got okay, no response. Others have received either outright rejection or suggestions. Mm, but it gave a feedback. Yes. Mm, mm,
I guess we can take off the QR code.
yeah. Yes, but not official feedback, but some points on WhatsApp. Okay, interesting. I think this is a good diversity of good representative of responses that people have received. People can receive from journals.
Yeah. Have you guys received any other kind of requests from the journals that you have submitted to in any form?
Um, since this process can be a little opaque, responses over here would also help other people to form their expectations of what what they can expect when they submit to journals. It'll
Yeah,
help them
that's
see. Yeah.
we most of us don't know what to expect from a journal in return when we do end up sending a submission. And what are we waiting for? Are we waiting for a outright acceptance? Are we waiting for suggestions, or is it a black hole with no response to come? Okay.
There's one more response. Acceptance on condition that if suggestions are incorporated, the paper would get published.
I myself helped a co uh, colleague, you can say, once submit to like something like 17 journals. We didn't receive responses for more than four, and they were basically outright refusals saying that it did not reach, did not fit our publication right now. Nothing beyond that. I believe our team could have some interesting experiences if you guys would like to share. Shreya, you're the first in line.
We had received feedback email, which ended up also pointing us in the direction of some sources that we could look at. That was quite helpful.
Yeah, that's nice.
Yeah, I think I received a couple of files of reviewers with their feedback or with their work on my submission. And the journal had asked me to make changes according to the reviewers' feedbacks.
So they actually shared the review file itself, the
Yeah.
reviewers.
Yes, yeah.
Is what was it a open review? Like you could see the names of the reviewers and all?
No, the file like was anonymized in the sense that I don't know who reviewed it, but the reviews were in different kinds. Like one of them actually had two files, which included like a list of suggestions as well as certain comments on my manuscript itself. Another one was just like a written review on um, my work as a whole. So based on that,
So they had a flexible review
review
system.
system, yes, yeah. So but then I got the like raw file from the reviewers itself as far as I understood the process, yes.
Okay, that's nice. That's nice. A blind review, but a flexible review process.
Yes, yeah.
Nice. Okay, we have had some interesting responses. Uh, let's try and answer them. Uh, and I think all of these actually get answered within my slides. So, Shreya, can we go back to my slides?
Yes.
Okay, so you have made the submission. How to proceed after? Waiting can be a very frustrating exercise in the first place. The first thing to do here is to find out the first response timeline of the journal. What's a first response? A first response is their first tentative decision on whether they're going to publish you or not. Whether they want you to work on the suggestions, whether they think uh, it's a good submission and would need very basic minimal edits, or whether they think your research did not fit their publication at the moment. So that's the first response. A first response timeline is by the time a journal tries to give a first response to all the submissions that they have received on average. So a first response timeline can be anywhere between 2 months to 7, 8, 9, 10 months, depending upon the journal, the number of submissions they receive, how rigorous or um, how quick their process is. So yeah, finding this out even before submission actually even helps more because you already know a lot of people end up wanting publications based on the criterias as uh, we already discussed last time also. For criterias for jobs for uh, PhDs. So knowing what amount of time you would even need to wait in the publication process is always a good idea, although the first response is only the first part of the process. So if someone takes, we'll talk about the publication process in detail, but because I mentioned it here, if the first response takes 5, 6 months, it will take another 4, 5, 6 months to the for the revisions and the publication process and everything else to happen on it. So we'll talk about that. That way you can time your submissions properly when you need to know the submission. Okay, you have submitted. You know what timeline do you need to wait on before you can write to them, ask about the update on your submission. The next thing is while you're waiting, be ready to get in conversation with the editors. Once they've sent you some suggestions, you should be able to discuss these suggestions, make revisions wherever necessary. And this gets to be multiple rounds. You'll send in revisions, the editors will end up reading them again. They'll talk about it again. If they find another loop, if they find another, a lot of times different editors end up reading the papers. So they'll talk in that manner. There'll be multiple rounds, and uh, once these rounds are over, in fact, before these rounds are over, one of the things that maybe I can mention here itself is that you need to understand that publishing is a process in learning itself. It's not an end result. You don't end your research work and then you start the submission work. You have you have got a research work in hand. Your publication starts to be like your submission to a publication is your first time you are starting a professional discussion on your uh, piece that you have written. So you need to be ready to revise. You should not think of your submission as the final. That's one thing that I have found in my own career as a problem, that people think that researchers are prone to thinking that the submission they have sent is final and should be answered with a black and white yes or no. Either it gets published or it gets rejected. That doesn't happen. The rejection might be black and white no. A publication, by the time you reach a publication, is never a simple yes. So, okay, going further, let's say you have passed the revision rounds. Now you have your paper accepted. The next thing is a lot of journals, in fact, as a rule, more or less, journals accept proofreading and formatting to be an author's responsibility. Getting the language right, getting the formatting right, uh, is something that you need to get done or you need to do yourself. This is the only process where you can actually um, take outside help, maybe a friend, maybe a professional agency. Before that, if you actually use anyone else for revisions, that's a very unethical practice in academia and should not be done. But when you're proofreading and when you're formatting, that's something that can be uh, taken help for. Uh, Most journals will have a formatting checklist for you or a proofreading checklist, even sometimes, although proofreading is more subjective based upon your language syntax, your geography. So, yes, uh, the final conclusive point I'll say here is that at no stage of publication can you be disengaged from your work. You have to keep talking to the editorial team. You have to uh, respond to them and respond to them in a timely manner, because journals have a timeline on which they have to publish. If your responses come too late, it is a possibility that your submission is dropped out of line, and they might end up saying that we can't uh, process it further, we can't talk about it any longer. You can send it back for future submission. So, because obviously you expect the journal to publish timely, in order for that to happen, they need the authors to respond timely and make the revisions timely. So that becomes our onus as authors to do all of that. So yeah, uh, okay. In order to navigate the publishing process, let's now talk about what the publishing process entails in the first place, what happens behind the scenes in a journal. Most journals have these rungs that I'm talking about. There might be variations, there might be, like I said, for peer review policies, there might be open reviews, there might be blind reviews, there are single blind and double blind reviews. But I will spare you the details. I'll give you a basic run through of the publication process. Uh, we have already talked about the first response times. You need to know that. If not, maybe shoot them a mail uh, before the submission itself. If you've already made the submission, do it after. A lot of journals end up writing this in their website itself. So you can actually read the literature, go through it, and figure out what their editorial processes look like. Uh, okay, a brief sensibility of the steps of the editorial process. We talked about desk rounds. You know by now that they are rounds where your paper isn't read. It is refused on the basis of criteria, of submission criteria mostly. Second, if you have passed the desk round, it will go for peer review rounds. Now, a lot of journals use peer review rounds to reach a first decision of whether the paper should be refused or taken up further for publication. But there are other journals who don't do that. They use peer reviews as suggestions. Uh, they will combine peer reviews with editorial reads and take in both in consideration before giving you a first decision. Uh, Once this is done, you'll most probably receive a refusal again or suggestions. I don't think it's mostly the case that you actually receive a direct publication. You'll receive the suggestions that they want you to work in. These suggestions would be a mix of what the reviewers think, what the editors think, and there'll be multiple rounds to it, as I previously said. Once that's done, everything about the argument is good. You will be asked to finalize your manuscript in terms of proofreading formatting. You can also club this round yourself in the suggestions to authors itself. While you're revising, you can be sure of the language, you can be careful with it. So that then the work in the next process of finalizing a manuscript actually reduces. Once you have finalized the manuscript, the journal will do the same on after receiving the final draft from you. They'll again format it as per their own publication templates. So they'll give you half the formatting instructions for you to do, and then they'll do the rest of the half that are required to create that final look of the publication. Uh, the publication work itself, your manuscript is ready, it's in a publication format. The publication work itself uh, requires a lot of technical stuffs. In case of print, you will have obviously the template of print and getting to a printing press. In terms of online, you have other technical DOIs and whatnot to go through. Uh, so this also takes time. This also has processes, but it majorly depends upon another thing, which is whether the publication is, firstly, if it's a issue-based publication. So you might have to wait for other authors before the issue is closed. So the moment the issue gets published, all the authors have to completed their work and they must all be ready to publish, which is when the issue comes out. So this means that even when you are done with your manuscript, you might have another waiting time of 3 4 months, or you might be upholding someone else's publication if you are getting late with your own revisions, which again can lead to you being dropped off from an issue if the timeline for the issue gets stretched. So yes, that's one thing. So publication work, you might have to wait another 2 3 4 months, whatever, for the issue to close. Another model of publication is a continuous model of publication, wherein when a paper is ready, they publish it there and then. Even that requires publication technicalities to be taken care of and may take a couple of weeks or a couple of months to actually go through the process, depending upon how many submissions are being processed at the time. So that's a basic on the editorial process. Now, I've told you how the process works from the time of submission to the time of publication. Now, if the process is so rigorous, how do some publications, journals end up promising you very quick publications? You'll get your paper published in 2 weeks, you'll get your paper published in a month. Uh, I'll leave that question for Sharanya to address. Uh, so yeah, in the next part of the presentation, I'll move forward now to how to handle rejections. Okay, as I have already briefly mentioned, publication is not a end result. It's a learning process in itself. You need to see it as a process where you actually start a conversation on a piece that you have written. I know you already do that with your professors, with your peers. This is more of a professional research setup wherein you talk to the industry experts who have been uh, publishing these journals in their field and figuring out how they are looking at research. What does it take for a research to be publishable? In that you have done your work, you have explored your ideas, you have done your research. Now, what does it take to convey it to the others? What does it take for it to become a piece of publishable material that can be read by some? So, uh, yes, which means that a lot of times we all receive a lot of rejections. It can be frustrating. How do you handle rejection then? Because that becomes a part of the process if you want to stay in your field and navigate it. So, if you have received a test rejection, it need not necessarily mean that your research is not publishable. Understand that, as I already said, test rejection means that either uh, you did not follow through the submission guidelines, you did not fit the scope of the journal, you did not fit the scope of the CFP, you were late with your submissions. All of that may lead to desk rejections. So, in the case of a desk rejection, know that okay, this is not necessarily about the research. Don't get hampered by that, and look forward to what might have gone wrong. You can always ask about it. If you're not sure why it got refused, you can shoot a mail and hope for a response from the team. Again, I know that a lot of editorial teams don't end up responding. Could be policy, could be they're overworked with the number of submissions they have. Yes, I don't have an answer to how to navigate that, but know that it's not necessarily about your research. Coming to the other part, there are things that you actually can do when it is about how you have research. The first thing I already said, if this is your first engagement with the professional world of research publications, it's a learning process. That is of utmost importance. Uh, The second is learn to talk to these people, to the editors. If you have access to the reviewers, mostly you won't, but if you have access to the reviewers, definitely the editors, they are your first readers. Understand their perspective. Being closed about your research or thinking of it as the end result doesn't help. If you disagree with any suggestions or comments of an editor, you can try and build a conversation upon it, see their perspectives again. It can help you even with the long-term sensibility of how to formulate research in your field. Uh, don't don't burn bridges. Don't be don't think that it's not okay to submit to the same journal again. Maybe have some waiting time. Don't submit to the same journal for a few months. Wait for another issue. Don't submit in the same issue. Maybe a year. Uh, Most probably a journal won't have a resubmission of the uh, work they have already refused once, but you can always send in new work at some other point in time. So yeah, don't close off your chances with a journal simply because you receive a refusal. Also, beyond this, beyond publication, there are other ways of engaging within the world of publication. One of this is peer review engagement. So a lot of journals allow you to review for them. Participating in the peer review process again shows you the kind of trends of research that are going around in your own field, the kind of ideas that are the methodologies of research that are happening. It enlarges your scope of what sort of research is going around. It shows you what sort of raw research looks like, what raw research looks like coming from others too. You end up reading a lot of research in your academic life, but at the end of the day, we all end up reading a lot of published research or maybe some papers from our colleagues and classmates. But understanding what sort of things are being submitted to journals and participating in that process, learning to evaluate research through peer reviews actually helps you a lot to navigate your own publications and research. Once we start looking with that perspective of trying to understand what might have gone wrong in the structure of a research or what might actually help a research, giving back constructed feedback, trying to. We all start at a very low level. Again, peer review engagement. One thing that I would clarify that this is a doubt that I hear a lot. A lot of people say, I'm not qualified to do peer reviews. That's never true at any point in your career. You're always a peer to somewhere or other. When you're in bachelor's, you're a peer to bachelor's. So you can maybe find undergraduate journals to peer review. When you're a master's, it doesn't require you to be uh, at the already an expert in your field to do peer review. Peer review has peer as the main word, wherein you are reviewing papers from same level of scholars. So yeah, it becomes a very important and reciprocal engagement. When you submit, you receive reviewer suggestions. You you should definitely contribute to the process similarly. So I think I'll close with that. Yeah, and I'll hand it over to Sharanya. Thank you for patience in listening. I hope this has been helpful. So, yeah, thank you.